I grew up in a family that was like really conservative. They're like anti-everything. When it came to substances, all I knew was a blanket statement that like substances were bad. When I ventured out into like university, I was out of that whole conservative Christian bubble, or that stream of Christianity that I came from as a child, and where drinking was like okay, but I had this big fear of it. So my first year of university, I like didn't touch anything. Was still super responsible with my academics and just like made excuses like saying, yeah, I don't need a drink, whatnot. But I really just like wanted to know. So in my second year of university, I had like my first ever like beer, and like I was like, oh, this is cool. And then whatever, and same thing for like weed. So my introduction to like any substance wasn't a bad one. And from there, I think that's like, it taught me something really good. It taught me to say like nothing's good, like black and white, like just good and bad. So I took that with me for the rest of my life. That did a lot of good things for me, because like also like I'm on medication for my mood. But back when I was a child, I thought like no meds, kind of like that thing, like those things are bad. It gave me this not perspective. It gave me this like desire to want to understand and just being able to relate to people. So when I first tried crystal meth, I was actually hooking up with these two other guys, and like at this point I didn't really do any drugs, but like they were about getting ready to do some, and I was like, what is that? And like I only ever heard it on like documentaries, like intervention, like seeing someone having their life like unmanageable. And so I never understood like what's the hype about this drug. Like can I just try it once so I can kind of like know what it's like. It's like someone wanting to know what it's like to be homeless for a day or a few days, just like just wanting a little bit of perspective. So that's where it was coming from. So anyways, I tried it at night, and then one person I was with had a lot of education to him. He was a lawyer, so he was very keen on educating me about, it's like, hey, if you ever do this again, do your research, but here's like a link. I want you to not like abuse this. So I'm very thankful for that at the time. And again, it helped reinforce that like things are not necessarily good or bad. So I went several months not having any issues with drug use. Like I think it was like 2 months later before I ever tried it again. And so like sure, like it's one of those drugs where it's very potent, very powerful at what it does. But at that time, I didn't see any issues. Like there might have been kind of like things on like on the underground, like people talk about addiction. Being like if there is an iceberg, it's like underneath the water, you don't see things. So things certainly could have been developing at that time. I just wasn't aware. The moment it started kind of like picking up was when I I guess I got in a relationship and I was really into this person. They also had a history of doing drugs, but from what I can see on the outside, their life was manageable. They're doing things properly. They're paying their bills and stuff like that. But through him, I learned where to get it. And like, I had a job, I had money. And so I got it just so I could, like, it's just kind of like when you buy treats for guests. Is like, hey, do you want some wine, or do you want crackers and cheese? I just thought, like, I'm not needing this, I just like want to have it, so if anyone comes over and wants to use it, I can. That's when it became the availability of it coming into my life made it me more likely to use it. And then I kind of like used it as a tool. So like, a lot of us will drink coffee. It became analogous to me getting up and drinking a coffee. At the time I was doing a job and I was working really, really hard. I was a personal trainer at a gym and we had crazy hours. I liked the training, but like, I hated their corporate sales focus, and so that was bringing a lot of stress in my life. So right around the time that I was doing that is kind of like right around the time I first met Crystal Meth. When those stressors became more, I think that's kind of like when we talk about like the saying that like addiction, the cause of addiction is trauma and the solution is connection. Well, maybe my trauma was I was really busy and I just needed to have like an escape. Sure, my life was manageable, like I was still going to work. Sure, lots of things are probably starting to happen. The only thing that forced me to my knees was like the physical things that happened. So like, I started getting vertigo at work as a personal trainer. It's hard, you're standing up all day and like, you can't just like be afraid to fall down. Started atrophying a lot, so I lost a lot of my body mass. That was a big like blow to my ego, like as a trainer, is like, I'm supposed to be big and muscular and yada yada yada, and like, I just didn't know this about the drug. Like I just knew that like, you had to sleep, that you needed to make sure you eat, you make sure that you don't hyper focus for 5 hours and be late for work. So those are in the forefront of my head, but I didn't know how strong of a grip it had on me. So it was one of those things where I got to learn what addiction was. Like, I don't know if I say I regret it. It's like, I'm happy to understand. It was definitely like a slap in the face kind of like learning lesson that I didn't think I was gonna get. But I'm grateful that like, I understand what it is to have an addiction now. Even going from that, it was hard for the first few months when I did get sober. Being able to think like, drugs aren't bad. Drugs can cause an addiction, and an addiction is the issue that we have now. I tried it kind of just right when I was getting like my license, right when I was starting out as a personal trainer. And I came from an upbringing that was like, maybe I wouldn't say like the best. It wasn't drug history, or sorry, history of like drug use or any substance or behavioral problems wasn't in my family. So I did definitely find it weird that like just came out of nowhere. But also like, I'm the first person in my family to like go to university, so it wasn't uncharacteristic of me, but it was like definitely like one of those, it's like, I don't know, like my mom found out about me, about my addiction or my drug use when I announced my sobriety. So she never knew that, and she's like, why would you ever do that? And I'm like, Mom, I don't know. Like, it's just one of those things. And again, like, they're from this conservative background where substances are bad. Like, you shouldn't do crystal meth. I know, like, when I raise my kids, whenever I have kids, it's not, I don't want that to be the message. I want the message to be more of like, addiction happens, and based on studies or science or whatever, it's more likely to happen with this drug. And then teach them, like, if you do fall into addiction, this is what you can do, or this is what to look out for. I think that's maybe a more useful message. Just like the harm reduction model is like, get people to not die so they can make it to recovery. But yeah, definitely was like, didn't have any of that in my family. And then it happened, I want to say, like, I had decent mental health and decent coping mechanisms in place before I even fell into an addiction. I remember I had a breakup and I was going through some depression, and so I sought help of a therapist, and I went through that therapist for several sessions, and that like really opened my mind up to like all these coping strategies. So by the time I fell into like an addiction, I knew what I had to do. So I knew it's like, oh, I definitely have a problem. It took me a few months before I actually did anything about it, but it's hard because it kind of did trick me, because like I have an education and I have some intellect where I tried some different things of like only using on certain days, or making sure that if I exhibit this behavior then there's a problem and stuff like that. But at some point I didn't, for whatever reason, it didn't clue in that like you can't outrun an addiction. And so it's one of the things where you think you do all the things to make your life manageable, but like there's like way more problems, and you like once you're under the influence or have it in your body for any period of time, there's a lot less that you're in control of. There was a few attempts for me trying to quit. When I was actually dating someone, was actually starting to have issues with money, so I was like, okay, let's go to detox. So I went to detox, not the purpose to like quit meth, but just I thought I need to reduce my tolerance to it. So that was my first attempt at it, but then I did get exposure to some of the recovery modalities, and it was difficult because like I only saw the 12-step, like that's the most common one, it's the most accessible to people, it's the most financially feasible for people, but as someone who's an atheist, like this is a common problem, is like, oh, what's a god or higher power. So it took me some time to really consider that an option. Therapy was kind of like on the forefront of my mind. When I guess my issues were starting to become like the vertigo, physical issues, and then some of the atrophy, and then I was starting to get a lot of anxiety. Like just a regular job at the gym was like terrifying me. Like people could tell like there's something not right with me, and I knew there wasn't something right with me, but it's weird because you can still do your job, but like you're doing your job, but your behavior is just a little bit different. And then so at some point I like, in the opposite of self-sabotage, try to save myself. Like I told my boss, like, hey, I have a drug use problem. Didn't tell them what it was specifically, but I knew that like this was the right thing to do. I wanted my issues, when they became issues, other people to be able to notice them for me when I couldn't. This is, I feel like, the ideal. I think most people won't do this. When issues arose, the most popular one being me always late for work. And I always had like an excuse, but like that's in my mind. And my boss was very good at realigning my behaviors, and I'm so grateful for that. Like I was 2 minutes late, she would like sit me down. It's like, why are you 2 minutes late? And it always came to like this same issue of just not being quite ready before I left the house, or all these other things. Like I really wasn't setting myself up for success. It all came to I wanted to do nothing but smoke meth. Like that was like just the biggest thing. I remember there was one point when I was like, fuck it, I'm just gonna get super high and not show up to work and just stop everything. Like that was in my mind the day I decided that I needed to quit. Part of my intellect that helped me was like I knew about like a little bit about behavioral change from personal training, and I knew that like because of this moment, because I was so high showing up to work and I like literally couldn't make myself come down any faster than I was, my motivation was really high to get sober. So I told my boss and we had a conversation like, it's like, I need to make a plan. I'm telling you I need to make a plan. Because if I go home after tonight, I'm gonna not care about this anymore. So I looked online, just looked at some like meth withdrawal and what that entailed. And for me, I thought recovery was just a detox. Like that's all I understood it to be. So I was like, okay, Isaac, you're going to take 3 weeks off of work to detox from meth. And so like I did that just at home. I didn't feel like I needed to go to detox. I made it to 13 days and I did that whole thing like fuck it, let's do that. And then I realized that it wasn't about like how much you did, it was the fact that you went back to that, like just that little bit of amount of time mattered. And then I had to really like look at myself and say like, why couldn't I go without this? Like looking deeper, and I think that's when I learned recovery is not just like about a detox. Like there's a whole process that you have to go through, and examining kind of like your list of values and how you rate them and what's important to you. And so at that point it's like, well, I need to put all the help I can get. Obviously the detox might work, but I want to ensure I'm successful. So just like everything else in life where we were like, I want the best brand of this or best brand of this, I was just like, you know what, I'm going to start getting some other external help, and then maybe even go to like a treatment center if I need that. And so I went to a CMA a meeting, and that I went with one of my friends, and I'd never once in my life thought I would ever be a person in one of those meetings. I remember going to a friend's party that was a fundraiser for their CMA group, and it was at the same building as my first meeting. And I was thinking like 3 years before, I was like trying to like think like, what is life to be like an addict, and like they seem so happy about the sobriety dates, and they're always they love telling you how long they've been sober for and what their date was, and or bragging about their new way of life. And I was like, wow, this is interesting. I just didn't understand it, because for me it was like, it's just a sure, you're like, it's a congratulations, but I didn't realize how big of a thing it meant. Until I got addicted, until I found myself like on the other side of the fence. And so I thought that was like, whoa, like full circle here. Yeah. I think when I first started going to CMA, my goal was to get back where I left off. And the drug use definitely put me quite a few steps back. But then there was a whole thing of like, okay, it's not just your drugs. It's like your whole life. What things have you done in the past that haven't been working? So from my whole sobriety and trying to see like what things did I try to stay sober and didn't work, I tried to apply those to the rest of the things I wanted. So I knew I wanted to be heavily involved in sports, and I hadn't had a background in sports yet. I wanted to sing in a musical. Like I had all these like bucket list items and things that just like I've wanted for so many years, and I, for whatever reason, haven't been able to achieve them. So that's been my main focus. And I know like the 12-step group, one of the suggestions and traditionally is this refrain from relationships. And I think once I started practicing that, the focus came a little bit more onto me. Is like, how can I be happy just on my own? And so that's where I started reminding me of like what it was like to be a kid, like when I had a whole backyard and I just like played with salamanders or painted rocks, or like the lemonade stand. Like I did a lot of things independently as a child, and then growing up, we have this need for connection, right? But we don't always connect to ourselves and our own interest, or we tell ourselves that we don't have time to do these things. In order to have a life, you need to do these things, or else you just won't be happy. Like I started playing hockey a year ago, didn't know how to skate, didn't know how to do anything. I tried to get into the military. That was a process, and it just ends up that it's not working out, so I'm not doing that. But like things that I was like going to try to attempt to do, right now I'm saving up for a surgery, a cosmetic surgery. It's been really important for me. I've wanted it since the age of 14, and so like now it's like, oh, if this is a priority, like let's do it. And it's not so much about the whole this is important. It's like, if I can just have a goal and achieve that goal, like that's going to teach me so much. Like I have so many things. Like I played the piano. My hard thing is just like finishing things. So I've actually cut off things that I've started. It's like, okay, I started this, but my focus is on finishing things. It's not what I achieve or how much I achieve. Is like the next, I want to achieve and finish something as soon as I can, and so that's been my focus. So yeah, one of my hobbies is playing piano, and I have the Grieg piano concerto I'm trying to learn, and then hopefully compete in a competition somewhere. So my background is in music. Like I went to university for piano, so I went to Mount Allison for piano, and my goal as a kid was to be a concert pianist. And then I learned I liked other things too, and then it was really hard because that one thing requires you to focus, and I've been just trying to work harder at doing that and other things, and sometimes it doesn't work. So do that. I go to the gym. I really like fitness sciences and understanding how the body works, and how we can optimize our goals and stuff like that. I really like being able to understand concepts, and once I can understand them, I like being able to pass them off to people. So I did discover a passion for education. I had a job teaching piano for 2 years, and I loved every day of it. And I also like see that in like my fitness, where it's not just the doing, but just understanding pedagogy, and how do we take information and then present it so it can be absorbed efficiently. Part of me would be okay with just like an okay life, but then another part wants to see how far I can go, and I know that going back to crystal meth definitely won't be aiding me in any way, and staying away from it is definitely going to make sure I can see how much I can achieve. And when I was younger, I always wanted to make the world a better place, and so like I don't know what that's going to do. I know Macklemore has this quote in one of his songs to his daughter, and he's saying like, do what you love to do, do it every day, and then do that for the rest of your life, and the world will change. And up until this year, I've always been like, I need to make a difference. There's so much going on in the world that needs to change, and so many people that aren't being noticed or situations aren't being noticed, I was starting to get stressed out that like it was like this pressure on me to do all this. And so that quote I have in my mind to always remind myself that like you can have fun and change the world. So same thing for crystal meth. A lot of the things that I felt like I relied on crystal meth for, I don't actually think I need right now. I can be the person I want to be. And I used to think crystal meth required that, like stamina or to look good or something like that. But honestly, when we look at the root cause of what we want, like that's not going to be the answer. We're always looking for the fast way out. And definitely me wanting something for the long term wouldn't involve crystal meth.